Well, welcome everybody. Thanks again for coming. It's been a month, so a lot has happened, and probably a lot of energetics have been pressing upon each and every one of you. I get some emails from you guys, and it definitely seems like there's a ramp up in the energetics. And so tonight I want to talk about that a bit. Tonight's going to be a bit of a different night. I have a lot of materials to go over to help you understand what's going on. A lot of it we've already gone through, so thankfully I won't have to go into great detail in explaining some of this stuff. And the reason why I take time to bring this information out in the detail that I do is like right now, with the intensification of the energies, it's very difficult to find a place to surrender. How do you surrender when the intensification keeps ramping up all the time? It doesn't quit. It's always on your back. It's always coming. And so that intensification, if we don't understand what's happening, it makes it so much more difficult to deal with it. And in not understanding, what do? We fall back to our own worst devices, which means we start beating ourselves. If we can't correct or find the peace, the stability, the centeredness, the spaciousness inside of us, we give it a few attempts at our discipline. But when it doesn't work, or that energetic is still there, we tend to start beating ourselves. What's wrong with me? I must be doing something wrong. And then we get into comparison, judgment, comparison, expectation, expectation of achievement. I should be better than this, and entitlement. And our ego goes out of control. So tonight, I want to take the time to go over from a little bit bigger picture view of what's going on, so that you can see, you have it right here. It's difficult, but you have it right here, and the way to bridge this energetic that you're feeling, the way to bridge it and resolve it is to not run from it. So we've gone over a lot of this material in the basics, the 2-day quantum navigation workshop, and we've gone over a lot of rudiments, how to deal with the emotions, how to deal with the psychology, the mentality. And remember, the emotions are one half of the circle dynamic, and the thoughts and stories make the other half. So the thoughts and emotions work hand in hand to keep that karmic wheel going round and round and keep us in a state of confusion. How do you end this cycle? And we've gone over that quite a number of times. We see through the stories. There is no story. But you got the emotional component. Even if you don't believe there's a story, the emotions make you feel so bad. Make you feel compressed. Make you feel you're doing something wrong. Make you feel you're worthless. Make you feel you're powerless. Make you feel you're guilty. So it's this part of the wheel, the emotion, that keeps, if I'm feeling the emotion, Here again, you work through the story, but if you got the emotion, the story comes up, I must be bad here, or I must be doing something wrong here. And the wheel keeps going round and round. So you got to break that cycle. And the way you break that cycle is not by fixing it. That's the counterintuitive aspect, which we've gone over a number of times. The counterintuitive says, and the emotion says, and the story says, you're guilty, you're bad, you're pain, you're ashamed, you have so much anger, blame, you're worthless, powerless, and so on. All these things. So, logically, the unconscious leader of ourself, called the ego, wants to help. So it starts to get engaged. Well, do this. 10,000 deep knee bends. Go help 400 old ladies across the street. All these different things, those are all doings. Those are all doings. They're not changing the program.
Responding to it.
Yes. You're responding to it. You're trying to fix it. I'm going to fix this feeling and these stories, which create the foundation. This foundation, this illusionary foundation we have about ourselves, becomes real solid. And our ego, always trying to help out, always trying to, pitch another deal to you. That's his job. Pitch a deal. Hey, if you do this, it'll fix it. But the ego is an illusion, so it's a shadow. So it's an unconscious form. It's there to help you. It's there to assist, but it can't give you holistic measures. It can't give you holistic remedies, resolution. Those come from seeing clearly. Seeing clearly through the stories and the emotions that create that wheel, and then that wheel over time calcifies and becomes belief systems, and that belief system is all utilized by your inner tyrant. And your inner tyrant is the one that keeps running. That's part of the ego, our tyrant, and I think Freud called it the superego. I call it the inner tyrant because it's a whole lot more close. Superego seems like, it's got a cape. It's got powers. Yeah, big old ass on it. SS. No, SE, excuse me. SE. And you don't know its powers. But a tyrant, that's pretty clear. And it's our own tyrant that we're responsible for flagging it, noticing it, and then disassembling the architecture that it utilizes to keep us running, keep us dissociated, keep us asleep. That's the job of the ego, is don't worry, I got this. Just do these deep knee bends for the rest of your life. Help those old ladies across the street. Do your neighbor's taxes.
Sounds like penance.
I know.
That's it. Penance is a big one. This is part of the architecture that goes to the tyrant. But it's our own unconsciousness looking at ourselves unconsciously and judging ourselves from that unconsciousness. So, these things, as we've stated in other evening sessions and even in the workshop, these things are like a manufacturing center. And you'll remember this graphic here. At our core fears, which we start out noticing what we can't change, what's painful, what's uncomfortable, what's inconvenient in our psyche, in our emotions, in our spirituality. Because even in spirituality, we try to we try to heal it and maybe go around it or, fix it in some kind of loopy way. But it doesn't require that. It requires us to see clearly. Because it's the consciousness that's gripping onto the belief system. And we know the belief system is composed of two things, the story and the emotion. So those two fabricate the foundation, and then that's used by the inner tyrant to keep you under thumb. You can't be at peace if your tyrant's always on your back. So these pain, shame, blame, fear, guilt, grief, anger, those are surface levels, and they're like the roots. What are the small branches of roots? What are those called? What would those be called? Mini roots. Okay.
Tuberose or something.
So you have your main roots, and then you have these little splinters from them. So pain, shame, blame, fear, guilt, grief, anger, those are all like those little splinters that go to the core root. And those core roots are when we can start to really work with the mental patterning, the consciousness patterning, which also traps the emotional pattern, right? That's the story and the emotion that work together to keep the karmic wheel going round and round, and then you keep running away from it. I keep running away from it. So that's core fear. If we track our pain, shame, blame, fear, guilt, grief, we get down to codependence, bullying, and bully. This is also victim and perpetrator. We get into trauma and abuse. We get down to core fear, and from core fear, this is before we had arms and legs. This is when we separated from Purusha. When we went unconscious, there was that separation. So at the core fear is when we can really begin to start healing the whole root system. Because the core fear, as we see, has the interpreted feelings, because you ain't got arms and legs, but you're separated, so you're a consciousness field. We are quantum. So we are superposition. Were, are, it's paradox. We were and are.
Because we're now a possibility that has manifested.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And in that possibility that's manifested, we manifest because of our entanglement. So our belief system is what makes us manifest. Our separation makes us manifest. And it's our beliefs that becomes the timing mechanism before we can come back. Because the timing mechanism depends on seeing clearly, appreciation, and compassion. All right, so when we separated, that's when our core fear started. We interpreted, here we are, in separation, in the void, and we have no ability to make any changes. So we're powerless. And if we're powerless, the next conclusion is we're worthless. And then we become needy. I want to get back. And then it becomes hopeless, or we're helpless, because there's nothing we could do to get back, and then we're hopeless. Oh, I give up. There's nothing I could do to change this. But it started in the separation from guiltiness. We felt guilty, so from the separation, we felt it was all our fault. All right. In our last Storm Wisdom evening, I went over this graphic here. And I also drew this. to illustrate. This is the void, and this is Purusha. So remember this? And this has the, first of all, the separation from Purusha. Let's put this here. And this is Prakriti. This, which Prakriti is also known as the void. So in Purusha, everything's in superposition because all the dualities have merged harmoniously into paradox. And there's an infinite array of paradox. But as it's separated, as we separate it, just like in Filipato Runge, or Rungi, I don't know exactly how to pronounce his last name, his graphic from 1803, which is beautifully illustrated, you separating from you through the eye of the needle. Of course, this is a circle, but in depicting it in this way, it also highlights the eye of the needle right here, the shift between. So this is what we talked about in the last Storm Wisdom evening, that when we went unconscious, there was a separation, separating from conscious to unconscious, and unconsciousness is painful. We went over this in quite a number of instances in these evening sessions, because it's like you take a balloon in order to create the void, and you twist it, and now you have twisted in the midsection to where you now have two different sections. It's all coming from the one, but it's split into two, and making it through that tiny, tiny hole there, you move into a different dynamic, and in this dynamic down here, it's very contractive, separative, compactive, and what do you call it? Rejective. You reject yourself. So everything inside of here, you don't want to have anything to do with in looking at yourself. So in this unconsciousness, these are where we start to feel all of our pain, shame, blame, fear, guilt, grief, and such. And those feelings are like the surface level, like I drew out here. And getting past those surface levels, to take you into a deeper insight, you have to go through the rage, outrage, indignation, and intolerance band, which is much more powerful than just simple anger. Your rage is important. As you go through the rage, as you accept the rage, then it starts to point out the 7 roots. And I've defined those: powerlessness, worthlessness, neediness, helplessness, hopelessness. But the first one we experienced was abandonment and betrayal. So it seems like to the unconscious one, the one that's separated, the one that separated by going to sleep, forgetting, to that one, it feels like there's a split inside you, and that split feels like you've been abandoned, and you're now in this space, you're all alone, you can't change it, you're powerless and worthless, needy, helpless, and hopeless. It all started from the abandonment and betrayal, which also results in guiltiness. I must have done something wrong. That's one of the foremost core fears when you separate. highlighting these things because where we're going tonight is about this energetic that we're all sensing and feeling. I've commented on it a number of times, and I'll go through that in a little bit. I got to go back through some of the lessons on this to explain the energetic that we're all starting to sense now. That energetic is like a tempest. So, in order for that tempest to resolve, certain things have to be understood. Without understanding, we're going to keep rejecting the whole unconsciousness paradigm. That means we're going to stay at war with ourselves, with our history, with all we perceive as our dysfunctions. And if you're at war with yourself, how can you come to peace? How? Only through compassionate understanding and acceptance. Compassionate understanding and acceptance creates the radical self-love. When you see all of these things then that I'm going through, and we have been going through, the picture begins to reveal itself. You start to see how big you are and how big your freedom is. It's enormous. But we're all required to walk it ourselves. And that's where we're going to go into tonight. Tonight's work is entitled How to Accept and Integrate the Tempest.
So the tempest is because of this void, this stuff that's we haven't accepted. That's what's creating this tempest.
Yes, but we need to see more than just that. You're tracking correctly. But I need to lay down a couple other things.
Okay.
Let's go back now to the 26,000 year cycle, because there's a dynamic that's happening that's irrefutable. You can't stop it. There's nothing you can do to change that factor. You all remember this graphic that I've used a number of times in this class, showing the 26,000 year cycle of our solar system as it moves in the great galactic disk. So for 13,000 years we're in the upper portion, and 13,000 years we're in the bottom portion. Fine. At 2012 we started making our transition through the mid-plane. And now we're above and entering into this upper section of the galactic disk.
So that's every 13,000 years that we change
We
to
change.
go above to going below.
That's correct. Now, as I explained, that in the past, let's say 13,000 years ago, time was moving seemingly ultra slow. We were in the separated energetics of the galaxy. Separation effect is from the torus field, where the energy is moving out away from galactic center before at mid-disk it begins its journey moving in. So this is a very separative point in time. It's very contractive. Everything reverts to its lowest state. So then we go through Kali Yuga down here. Okay, so time, and this is my graphic of the speeding of time. As we came down through here, at some point in this journey, time was really, really slow and we were experiencing great separation. What a headache. So as we kept going on, it seemed like endless things could be done. In comparative to now, it seems like time is moving so fast you can't get you can barely get anything done in a day, and the day's over. So the speeding up of time as we've made this journey has created a dynamic. And that dynamic, nearing the, let's say this is the 2012 point, the center fuge. In these last few turns of the spiral, you're spinning faster and faster. And that's getting us to change from utilizing all of our references for achievement, moving ahead, gaining, evolving on external markers. And so we try to hold on to the external markers to show us that we are moving ahead. And as this centrifuge effect starts coming up, we can't grip those things. And those things they become much harder to grip onto and use as a orientation for us. That's moving us from external references towards internal references. So I've been through this explanation a number of times, so I'm going to move through it quickly. And as the speeding up starts happening, you start getting that centrifuge effect, and that centrifuge effect is kind of like that. Have you ever seen a medical centrifuge? They put blood in vials, and those vials, after they've been spun for a while, they reset order according to natural order. So you'll look at the blood and it'll have almost like a rainbow. So according to density and weight. So that's natural order. Okay? So in that centrifuge of time, there's another thing that's happening. So I'm going to move over to this piece here. If we just took this section of the speeding up of time, put it here, it becomes quite evident that as we're in this increasing time, it's almost like a black hole, this vortex. And that black hole, as we know in a black hole, we start getting closer and closer to the singularity. Singularity's job is take all waves and particles that are entangled, process them, break them down, so that they can return to superposition. So we have this vortex moving us deeper and deeper, closer to the singularity. This is like our own experience of moving towards our own fugue and crucible. The signs, the external cardinal points, if you will, they're being moved around so much we have to let go and change to an internal referencing system. And in that internal referencing system, where do we come from? We're consciousness, right? So the quantum singularity is breaking us down, breaking down our habit and pattern of looking at ourselves, managing ourselves from the perspective of being a human and what that means. And in our other classes, we've seen the human comes into this world unconscious as a child and goes through an evolution with its parents and friends and such that's very similar to an amusement park fun house mirror, where everyone is changing all the time, like being in front of different mirrors and different configurations. So you're getting a reflection of yourself that's totally distorted, and you're trying to put these patchworks of yourself together and manage that, and you're taking the litmus, who am I, what am I, where did I come from the orchestration of creating this patchwork quilt of identity, history, and personality. So all of those are are false, and our singularity, that's its job. We've become so attached to this belief in ourself and our patchwork quilt of history, personality, identity, that its job is to start unraveling that. We're going to have a few emotions come loose. So the fugue state that we start to experience as the centrifuge keeps increasing, it starts bringing us closer and closer to the singularity. Where's the singularity? As we've pointed out, in previous workshops, the singularity exists right here, right in between Purusha and Prakriti, right in the middle in that infinitesimally small hole, over enlarged here, that infinitesimally small hole between the diamond, the black and white diamonds in the center of your heart. So part of the architecture here is very, very contractive. It's very, very separative. It's very, very resistive and, what do you call it? Not resistive, but it pushes you away. Any thought of you. Maybe I'll think of the word later. So this very nature of separation, I need to go into a little bit more so we can understand it a little more clearly.
But the idea of the singularity is to unravel that, the void
Right.
that we're in,
Right.
so we can go to this, well, okay.
So,
And is it like your circle there is going, we just crossed and are on the top or above the line, but it's going to get higher, so the time's going to get shorter, faster, faster, faster.
yes. What's happening here? Have we resolved all of our experiences of pain, shame, blame, fear, guilt, grief, anger, powerlessness, worthlessness, neediness, helplessness, hopelessness, guiltiness, rage, outrage, indignation, and intolerance? Have we dealt with them yet? Have we put them in their proper space where we can compassionately accept them? No. No, we haven't. We haven't. We have not.
Not even a little bit?
We're getting there. We're getting there.
Like on the Titanic sitting
Right,
here.
yeah.
But remember, there's nothing to fix. There is nothing to fix. There is only seeing clearly, accepting and appreciating. I'm going to give you an experience. I'm going to make myself naked emotionally, and talk about how this process works. Because we've laid enough groundwork now to begin to really put together not just these theory, which I mentioned in the last one. I'm not giving you theory. I'm giving you experience. This is what I've come across inside myself, and as I research it, I'm finding, holy moly, this stuff was written thousands of years ago. So, we're processing this, because of this centrifuge effect, it's doing this. Well, come on, let's try to get through the quantum singularity, but we have our fugue experiences, right? Fugue, which is like seemingly reality. You may go into your job or your relationship or whatever, friends, and all of a sudden you feel like there's no gravity under your feet, you're in darkness, although the light's still shining, you can see, but it just feels like darkness. There's no orientation, there's no gravity, there's nowhere for you to relate your orientation from. So you're in the fugue, and in the fugue you feel absolutely vulnerable. Everything's been taken away. You're stripped naked, absolutely bared to the bone. And what you have left, wow, you start experiencing pain, shame, blame, fear, guilt, grief, all your stories and emotions. Why? The spinning, the centrifuge effect, is bumping your entanglements up against the quantum singularity. So it gives you, remember last Storm Wisdom evening session, I was talking about how the 7 roots of the unconscious. The 7 roots, it seems like as you work through that pain, shame, blame, fear, guilt, grief, and such, which are the mini roots, go through the rage, outrage, and indignation, and you notice nowadays everyone's hitting that band, and they are not happy, and they are reacting volcanically, because they're trying to look at it from the dynamic of polarity, duality and polarity. I'm not this, but I can't escape it, so take everyone down. I'm going to make everyone pay for what I feel, because I've been abandoned and betrayed. That's the big theme coming up for those who are reacting so violently. So remember, the centrifuge is pushing this stuff up, meeting in the fugue, which is your own crucible, and melting you down, melting all your constructs of your being, your humanness, who you think you were.
Your belief system.
Your belief
Your
systems.
systems,
Yes, right. Your false belief systems are batting up against that eye of the needle. And diamond is so pure. It allows ultimate transparency of all the spectrums of light, not like a crystal. Crystal only allows polarized light to harmonize. Helpful, but not perfect. Diamond is much better. So the diamond is right there, right in the middle of the eye of the needle, and that's where your consciousness resides. But now we've got a problem. We've got a big problem. The whole reality, speeding up of time, is bumping us up to the quantum singularity, and it don't feel good. That stuff needs to be sorted. How do we sort this tempest? Well, I've already started explaining that the spiraling of time is almost like this black snake of unconsciousness. Let's give it a really powerful black snake. It's a cobra, so it can kill you. But what is the snake of unconsciousness? What does it kill? What's its venom? Facing unconsciousness. What is unconscious? It's you. It's what you judgmentally hold against yourself. So there's this black snake of your unconsciousness. At the same time there's a white snake. But this black snake is the one we're concerned with, because it requires our conscious understanding, appreciation, and compassion. As we stop fighting ourselves, stop running from ourselves, stop trying to fix yourself, but start to accept yourself, stop running from yourself, then the cycle begins to change. So our fugue experience is almost like we're getting bit by the fangs and the venom of the black snake or the scorpion. So you get a venom experience being in the void, being in the fugue and the crucible. You meet your own entanglements. That unconsciousness is venom. Some of the Native Americans have a process where you take the bite of the snake until you get used to it. It takes you on a journey. You journey through your unconsciousness. As you get used to the bite, you no longer start judging yourself. You can take the full exposure of your unconsciousness.
Which is that pratika there.
Yeah,
all that
property
stuff,
and void, yes.
Yeah.
With all of those
Well,
contractive elements. All of those elements that we've seen in this graphic here. All of these elements are repulsive. That's the word I was looking for. Repulsive.
Oh, repulsive. As far as us looking at it, we're repulsed by what we see
In ourselves.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Our repulsiveness towards these things we cannot take. So that's why the venom, if we're so polarized, we're into, they call it spiritual bypassing now, right? You're only positive. Only positive. You can only accept positive. So if you get a bite of your own unconsciousness, that'll probably kill you. But if you take enough bites of your own consciousness, pretty soon you start to see clearly, and you have compassion and appreciation. The death can't kill you. Unconsciousness cannot kill you. So the venom is there for a purpose. The venom, which is going into the fugue, meeting the crucible feels like everything is burning. All your entanglements, you're meeting, and it's separating the dross, which is the impurities, from the purities. It's helping you amalgamate, bring your parts back home. Your metal returns pure, purified.
So that's like wisdom from all of this.
Yes, but there's more. Okay, so part of the dynamic, and the reason why we're going over this is one, to understand it so we can accept ourselves a little more, but also to see that the dynamic and the speeding up of time is causing this. Come on, hurry up, get this stuff done. So we start butting up and having more fugue experiences. This, as I said, is almost like the snake spiraling up, trying to get through. The black snake is trying to get through. What stops it from going through? Compassionate, conscious, understanding, and appreciation for what this is. Now, to get the depths of this, I need to go to another area here. That's just part. Oh. Well, this is from the contact workshop.
Oh, do we got to deal with those guys?
So,
oh.
Gonna clean him up.
Are we going to see those guys when we hit singularity?
you'll see all your parts.
Yeah, yeah.
You on every. in every race, terrestrially and extraterrestrial. Okay, to understand a little bit more, this is so important, what's happening right now, the speeding up of time, and how it's drawing up our unconscious body to be recognized, appreciated, and accepted. Also, we highlight who and what we are. We re-identify, not with the patchwork quilt person who has all of the patchwork quilt individual basically is made out of all of this and has so much repulsion about any of these is a badge of dishonor to the patchwork quilt identity. Right? You have a little anger, you're bad. Have a little guilt, you're bad. Shame, blame, rage. And as we said, rage helps you to see the core roots. Okay?
Is this any way similar to like soul retrieval that people practice?
It can be.
Because you mentioned the word fragmented there.
Right. We fragment and our pieces go, as we do something bad and we blame ourselves, we're guilty of everything. So, of course, we got to pay for it. So most of the time we got nothing to pay for except for, I'll take that part of myself and throw it away so that it never happens again.
Right.
There's splitting yourself.
Or I'll go have another drink.
Yeah.
Or do a little drugs or something.
I'll fix it that way.
Yeah, right. I'll cover that sucker over.
Yeah. Okay. To understand this process a little bit more, I need to go into the analogy of a sun. What? The sun is so much like our heart that we can utilize some of the understandings present in the model, this model that we're going to use demonstratively, to view our own heart, because it's going to help us with the entanglement process. This tempest is pushing up against us, right? I'll get into the tempest just a little bit more, but the sun. When we look at the sun, from the distance that we are now, we think, wow, it's always so constant, so radiant. Wow. From this distance, it's magnificent, and we praise it for being so consistent. No life would exist without it, right? So they tell us. However, that's kind of not true. Because as we get closer to the sun, or examine it in greater detail, we get to the photosphere and the chromosphere, which are the very two top layers of it. It's there that we can see these holes. There's holes in the sun, in the sporadic. And in these holes in the sun, they have different events. These holes in the sun, we find these great CMEs, these ejections, great amounts of magnetic and plasma, magnetic fire. And these bolts that come out of the surface of the sun all kind of highlight that the sun goes through a constant change psychological. Well, if we were to use, let's say, the electrical discharges and the magnetic discharges, which are also influxed with the plasma, you have then if you take electricity as that being like thoughts, similar to the mind, and magnetic being like the emotions, and plasma being like spirit, or heightened emotion, or rage. We can see the sun goes through a lot of dynamics of mental activity and emotional flare-ups, even great experiences of rage.
Electric and magnetic was like thoughts and emotion.
Right.
So the sun is doing something electric and magnetic. So
Yes.
Okay.
And it's wildly expressive. So we can look at
So
the
it doesn't
sun.
mind looking at itself, then is kind of what you're saying, right?
Yes. So when we look at the sun, we can see the similarity. Wow. We beat ourselves because we're not consistent, not like the sun. We have these judgments about ourselves that we should be always even keeled, always radiant. If we're not always radiant, always loving, something's wrong with us. Right? Well, when we look at the sun, we can see that not even the sun can hold us. Why is that? Why can't things be perfect? Well, it is perfect. But the sun is managing the 5 elements. And those 5 elements cannot be harmonized in the 3D perfectly. So it's going to always be changing. It's going to always be going through sine waves and periodicities of higher amounts of sunspots and activity, solar activity, and low periods. Just like us. Just like us. So that's important to see as a model. When we're trying to judge ourselves, we have this overview of ourselves. That if we're not perfect like the sun, we're failing.
Could the sun actually be reflecting what we're going through?
Could be.
I mean, you could
Is
go
it
one
all-
direction or the other. Yeah.
When we look at Purusha and we look at what Krishna says, Krishna said, "I am the beginning, middle, and end of each and every heart." That's all one. God's working it out. Now, what I want to point out is that 5 elements, if we look deeper into the sun, we're going to see one more attribute that's very important. So 5 elements is not perfectly managed in this reality. There's going to be holes. And those holes are responsible for the pains we have. They're like wounds. Psychological and emotional. Just for being in 3D. It takes a higher level in the frequency band to experience more harmonic. In 3D, it's doing the best it can with the 5 elements. So even with the sun, we can use the sun as a model to then give ourselves a little bit of a break. We're managing 3D too. And you're going to have those flare-ups all the time. And there are going to be high periods and low periods. Okay. One more factor. If we go down deeper into the sun, there's 2 different forces that are at play. One of them is infinite amount of gravity. So infinite amount of compaction. It's trying to take everything, all physical things that it can grab onto, and through gravitation it's trying to grip it harder. Yet at the same time, that gripping, that compaction, that gravitation is also causing a fusion. And that fusion is causing a radiance, an expansion, a transformation of the energies. So on one hand, great gravitation is being assuaged by the fusion. So it's being kept in balance. Otherwise, if the fuel run out, then the compaction would win over. And it would either implode or explode, depending on its size. Okay?
Well, it's a black hole, isn't that where the
That's where a black hole comes from. So that's the singularity. Okay? So in the middle of the sun, in the middle of the sun, we have the same forces going on. Repulsion, compaction, contraction, gravitation, and highly magnetic. Like this. Meets the singularity, and fusion begins. Infinite radiance, infinite expansion, infinite inclusion. At the center of our heart is the same forces that are in action as the center of the sun and at the center of all the universe. So we're a reflection of that right here. All right. That part is important to understand. That the infinite gravitation that we have, that we're experiencing, the infinite repulsion when we're in the void and we're meeting our unconsciousness, which only makes us feel like I am even more worthless. I feel it even deeper. No. It's true that that's what's there, and that's what you feel, but remember, no story. It's compaction. Understanding the dynamics of the sun will help them understand the dynamics that are at play between Purusha and Prakriti. And when we understand that dynamic, then we can look at the 7 roots and nothingness. I put nothingness on this one here, which is the hardest one because the ego hates being nothing. It's part of the patchwork quilt. So dealing with these 6 forerunners enables us to abide in nothingness with great understanding. Yeah, I am nothing. I'm nothing in everything. I'm paradoxically here in all my depths. All right. These 7 roots. I want to show you something more. You've seen this in previous nights. Everything in 3D has an XYZ axis which represents length, width, height. Easy to understand. That length, width, height of everything in the 3D has 6 directions. Okay? Easy to see. Up, down, left, right, side to side. So the 6 directions is very important to understand before you understand this, to get to the 7th direction. The 7th direction is take them all inward. 7th direction is imperative. This is where we move into quantum. So, in the understanding of our dualities, I've used this in the past, this understanding, to highlight that we have these 3 axes, so we have 3 major dualities to work with to give us the familiarity and understanding before we work with all our dualities. The important thing about seeing our dualities is to understand they're like yin and yang. Yin seeks yang, yang seeks yin. Gone over this quite a number of times. So, in this 3 axes, masculine seeks the feminine, the adult seeks the inner child, the true self seeks the false self as much as the false self seeks the true self. But remember, the false self has self-repulsion. When you feel your false self, when you feel yourself in the void, and your stories are coming up, and you feel totally worthless, helpless, hopeless, needy, guilty, that's when you need to have that compassion come up and see the radical self-love. This is looking for the true self to come home to. So it's looking for acceptance, appreciation, understanding, not judgment. You've been judged enough. Not only by your forerunners, your parents and whatever models beat on you or hounded you in this lifetime or other lifetimes, but you forget. Those models of behaviors were learned as a young individual, and so they keep going on. Those same voices, I still hear my mom say, Ronald, please, don't do that. So, I constantly have those voices, those models of behaviors going on. So we're constantly, with our consciousness, needing to accept our stories as they come up and their emotional contribution to create that story into a belief system so that we can allow them to come home. Okay? So, I'm going to show you something here in just a moment. These axes, when you're ready to non-polarize, to see yourself clearly, the bridge of understanding, compassion, and acceptance begins to be formed between the adult and the inner child. The inner child needs the adult, and the adult needs the inner child to break through a lot of the fears, a lot of the boundaries, a lot of the incapacitations that the adult feels. The inner child knows exactly what happened, where it happened, why it doesn't understand why, but understands where, when, and what happened. It's the adult that can rescue, so to speak, or integrate the child by attending to the child's needs. The child is left in an immature state of processing what happened in the past. So it needs the adult you to help it over the hump. As they build this appreciation towards each other, they return to superposition because they've dealt with their entanglement. They're not fighting and competing for each other for dominance. No, we're going to do it my way. No, we're going to do it my way. I'll get you. No, I'll get you. And that happens then when we do it with the adult and the inner child, then we can apply those same techniques to the masculine, inner and inner feminine. Because we have both qualities. And then when we have those four done, then we can apply it true self to false self. And then they can all start to come home. So these bridges are really important. Now, in this graphic, I've been talking about the 7 roots of unconsciousness. Well, let's just take and add see here, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I could say here's my 7 roots. And we know that Purusha is the end of the bridge. So our 7 roots of unconsciousness has 7 virtues of consciousness. See this form? Remember this form? A few of these evening sessions ago, I brought out this old geometry and was talking about the diamond, how important the diamond radiant lines were. And you could see that there's lower ones here in the mid-range or the equator. There's ones that point downward and there's ones that point upward. So we can split it in the middle. Draw the sphere, the bottom sphere, void or prakriti, and the upper sphere. So that represented the diamonds in your heart and the radiant paths, the diagonal paths. This diagonal path these diagonal paths are a metaphor for all the bridges of integration for your dualities. In other words, from Purusha, when it's separated, its opposite, an unconscious form, went into the void, went into Prakriti. It went into contractedness, compactedness, separation. So its journey is to come back. And we saw with the sun that there's holes in the sun. They cannot be filled. Like our heart, we have wounds. Cannot be filled because we're in 3D. So these diamond lines are very much like, have you seen some drawings of the human heart? You have a ventricle, and then looks like a strawberry. Do you know what the Sacred Heart is? You ever seen the Sacred Heart? For those of you who haven't seen a Sacred Heart, I'll show you an image real quick.
That isn't the one the guys tattoo on their arm with an arrow through it, is it?
With an arrow. Oh yeah.
Have you ever
Okay,
seen that?
yes, I have seen those. Let's see. Ah, there it is. Ah. Here's the Sacred Heart. And the Sacred Heart has a crown of thorns. It was first, for the camera, it was first, I believe, worshipped from, it was a mystical order from the Knights Templars who, nobody knows exactly what their, what was the protocol, the mystery, but apparently there was visions of this Sacred Heart, and it exposed the crown of thorns around the heart. The crown of thorns, I was in meditation doing this work, and they were showing me the things about the sun, the holes in the sun, and they said even your human heart, the Sacred Heart, has all these holes, and that is from the crown, not the crown of thorns, but the thorn, the wreath of thorns in the heart, which is very similar to the crown of thorns that Christ wore. So, of course, this got my curiosity. Why are you showing me a heart with the crown of thorns and the wreath of thorns in the heart? And they said all the work you've been doing on understanding and clearly seeing the 7 roots of the unconsciousness and all their branches, and beginning to accept this aspect. Part of the tempest that you're all experiencing at this time. The tempest, as I've explained earlier, is reality helping to push and move and spin and all of the entanglements up to the singularity for processing, so that you experience it, you feel it, so you don't run away. And in doing that, the tempest can only be settled, resolved in one way. So of course I was curious about that. And they said, you have to go to your Waterloo moment. I go, Waterloo moment. Waterloo moment. What's my Waterloo moment? So as you know, Waterloo was a battle that took place in 18th or early 19th century France, late 1800s. Everyone was expecting Napoleon to win, especially Napoleon. But for Napoleon, big surprise, he lost. So it was catastrophic in every way, since it ended his career as an emperor. So my Waterloo moment, I immediately went back to when I was 5 years old. I had a Waterloo moment. So they were telling me, in your Waterloo moment, all your roots of unconsciousness exist at your Waterloo moment. And I go, what's my Waterloo moment? Oh, yeah. So, okay, I got to reveal something, get really emotionally naked. For me, my Waterloo moment, I was 5 years old. We were living in Japan, and we had a house off base, very rural area, had a little stream there, some forest nearby. It was perfect conditions, you know. So my older brother and I, we were so enthralled with being so close to nature, and we were, I think one day we were picking up all these little tadpoles and stuff and just having fun with that. And I think we forgot my dad's rule, which was the table had to be set at 5 o'clock on the dot. And if we didn't have it done on or about 5 o'clock, there was hell to be paid. Well, my Waterloo moment was we were playing with frogs.
Playing with what?
Frogs.
Little tadpole.
We lost track of time. So when my father got home, he was incensed. And for the next, seemed like, I don't know how long it was, but I know it was a good, at least an hour of, he beat us, berated us. It was like torture. He took all our clothes off. 5 years old. I'm 5 years old. Took all our clothes off, and he says, you ain't going to live by my rules, then I want you out of my house now. You go find your own way to live. Think about that when it's cold. Get out of my house. But this was also, this was after, he said that after we were already black and blue and had stood in the corner, and you know, all the while it was just intense. So during that period, that's my Waterloo moment. My Waterloo moment then had more than these surface emotions. They had these cracks, these roots. So for me, guiltiness. Of course, we're being violated. We're being traumatized. We're being beaten like hell. So guiltiness was big time there. Yeah, I owned it. I am guilty. I'm paying for it right now. Guiltiness. Powerlessness. I couldn't do anything to stop what was going on. And where was Mom?
That was my question.
Mom isn't giving any support at all. She's not protecting us. So, remember this? Remember this here? First there's abandonment and betrayal. So, for me, my mom abandoned me, betrayed me, and my brother. My father, well, he was dishing out all of the pain and suffering. So of course he abandoned and betrayed. Where was the masculine? Not protecting, according to a child. So all these are there though. Guilt, pain, shame, anger, grief. All that stuff is there. But I'm talking about core stuff. Guiltiness, powerlessness. Worthless, of course. Mom's not there to protect us. Dad's not there to protect us. Oh my God, we must be worthless. And looking at splinters from there, I can see he would never talk to us. So we had nothing that he wanted to hear from us. We had nothing worthwhile for him to give us quality attention. Neediness. In the moment, you're being tortured, you're being beaten and talked down to and raged on, bullied. Little child need a little bit of something.
I'm starting to feel a little rage here over this whole thing.
Wait.
That's okay.
Hold on to
right?
that.
Wait a minute, I gotta throw a chair against the wall.
I'll join you, okay?
Okay.
We're taking 5. Gotta throw a few chairs, okay? So, we're at helpless. How can I change this? I can't. I have to go through it. I have to tolerate it. I have to go through it. I'm helpless. There's no one to protect me. And hopeless.
I'm surprised you didn't develop some kind of disease or chronic condition over that.
Yeah, well, I used to have asthma when I was young.
Real bad, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, you can see that all 7 roots are there. All 7 roots are there. I can't be nothing. So, that's a side note. Now here's the thing. All of these are like swords going through the heart. And remember in that illustration I was just showing, there's one major wound in the left side. And then this big cross. Right?
So that's an energetic wound, right? Not a physical wound.
Well, wait a minute. This, on the Sacred Heart, according to Jesus, when Jesus was up on the cross, going through his crucifixion, it was the job of the Roman centurion who had given so much of his time being in the legions and so on, but he developed cataracts, so he was stationed there at Golgotha, and his job was pierce the left side. His name was Gaius Cassius Longinus. So the spear of Longinus, that head, was a talisman. But anyway, purportedly, he went to the heart. But there's all these records that show that Christ didn't die there. But that's another. We can't prove that, and those are records. However accurate they could be. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is, you have this band around the heart with all of the thorns representing these axes, the wounds, just like the sun, the holes. They can't be harmonized. Can't be harmonized. They're gateways. They're gateways. So for me, understanding all of these principles, when they were talking to me, they said you have to go back into your Waterloo moment. And in the Waterloo moment, if you had ever looked at a crack in your windshield, there's a point of impact, and then you have all these circular fractures from it that extend out. In geometry, circular or curving is emotion, female. And then you also have linear cracks.
Usually one big one.
Okay.
It just keeps going across your windshield.
It's a major malfunction. So you have the story and the emotion. Story and emotion. At your Waterloo moment, this is what I did with reality. At my Waterloo moment, my entanglement was all of those emotions. Yes, I'm a little child being beaten, experiencing the whole gamut of the emotion and all of the splits. Here's these, just like very similar to the crown of thorns, and also the split in the windshield, also the crack of the 7 roots of unconsciousness. So, they told me, you have to go back and accept all the emotions back. Like being on the cross, opening up that wound, and let them all come back home. Empty the room by accepting back. That's where they want to go. You split yourself at the moment of unconsciousness, way back, long time ago, before you had arms and legs. You created these belief systems, and you pined to surmount them. You created your father and your mother and your brother. And you orchestrated a scenario where you would be helpless, hopeless, and so on. So as you accept them all, not running from them, accept them. Then you allow that tempest, which is all the dynamics of you resisting, just like in the last Storm Wisdom evening session, I used the magnets, horseshoe magnets. When you're repulsed by what your Waterloo moments were, you keep running from it. But if you accept them for what they are, as they are, not running, it flips the magnets from repulsion to attraction. And in the attraction, all can come home into superposition. So as I did that, as I went through the room, I cried and I cried and I cried, accepting all of the emotions that poor child went through, which is that poor consciousness, when it separated, went through that hell. Separation is hell. So as I'm sitting there and accepting this, I'm also aware of the moment of the separation in Purusha. Yet these actors are acting it out for me. Me as the child, me as my brother, so I won't be alone. Oh my God, I now have new respect for my brother. But my father and my mother also. As I took back all of the outrage, rage, intolerance, guiltiness, powerlessness, hopelessness, helpless, all those things. As I let all the wound, which is like the entire wreath of all those pokers around the heart and around the head, a crown of thorns and wreath of thorns. Your heart feels like you go through a crucifixion. You go through, there's that wound. You let that wound open. You're so vulnerable. You're so naked, but you're not running. You're allowing all of those actors and emotions to come back home. And as they came back home, all of a sudden, the walls, I was watching the walls dissolve. I was watching my father dissolve. My mother dissolved. My brother, who went through the same thing I went. And I realized this is all me. These are all the constructs. I organized this to wake me up because I separated from myself. I'm seeking my own awakening in this moment by allowing all of this to come back and me to be present for myself. So from that moment, everything just turned into heaven. I had this experience where I wasn't expecting this. I had no reason to put this together. But all of a sudden, there's this enormous body of this scaly snake, black on the outside. Its bottom is right here, and it's gold, blackish gold on its bottom, but its body is big like this, and it's going up. So I'm looking up like this, and as I look up, I'm like realizing I'm like looking up from a well, those old-fashioned wells. So I'm looking up, and about the height of the ceiling, I see peering over, one in front of me and one to the left of me. There's this, the sky is heavenly blue. Not like the sky you see outside. This is like quantum, but blue, heaven, beautiful heaven blue. And there's this beautiful golden nimbus, blue-skinned being. He's looking down at me. And I realize it's Kali.
Oh,
Kali.
wow.
Kali is the Kali ensures that no ego arises.
Wow.
So I see Kali with the golden nimbus, and then I'm looking over, and I see the skulls too, on part of the skulls on around his neck, and then I see Hanuman. I've never seen these two before.
Wow.
But Hanuman's looking at me and I go, you feel so familiar. So the image of the snake, I started to realize, and I got in the download, as you take the poison and don't run from yourself, go through your crucifixion, you transform everything. You allow the tempest to integrate. The tempest is trying to come up for you to integrate. So that's where I found peace, was that. And I go back into that room now, go check it out. There's only love in that room, and there's only me, and there's only consciousness. And one last thing, there's a lady in New Zealand, and she's a bit of a accomplished shaman herself.
I've got
And-
the battery flashing.
Oh, okay. We'll be done in just a second here, and we'll change the battery. She has, she asked for help a while ago, and I gave her some of this understanding and stuff, and she loved it so much that she had good success with it, so she started transcribing the workshops and the evening sessions. And I got a message from her October 24th, and I want to read it here. It's short. She said, "Hi, Ron. Just wanted to share with you my beautiful experience." Her name is Karen. "My beautiful experience, which is directly related to your quantum navigation healing process. Yesterday, I shed lots of tears holding my little cherub." Remember the work we said, you are like a spokesperson of your inner tribe, your queen or your king of your little tribe of cherubs. Your inner child and under-processed elements are like little cherubs, like little kids. And it's up to you to validate them, bring them home, and integrate them. So she said, "I shed lots of tears holding my little cherub who felt worthless and stupid. My eyes were closed and then suddenly saw inwardly another wounded cherub who was crawling towards me. She was too weak to walk. She looked disheveled and emaciated. I picked her up and held her close to my heart. She told me she just wanted to die. She was so tired and kept saying this over and over. So I held her tight, talking to her, all the while validating her feelings. She felt abandoned and just wanted to curl up and die. Suddenly my little cherub morphed into a golem-like being, like the one from Lord of the Rings. She told me savagely, 'I just want to kill him. I want to kill him.' She had such incredible, tremendous, powerful rage. Yet as soon as I validated her feelings, something amazing happened. I immediately expanded with a whoosh. I've never had this experience before. In this experience, I could hear the crickets chirping, and yet I was the crickets. I was the birds singing, the sun shining. I felt myself as my whole environment, near and far, and was permeated with a feeling of joyful peacefulness. I assume this must be the experience of going through the eye of the needle, of being pulled through, and then went through this beautiful experience of superposition for about 15 minutes. I know there's still more to release. However, I feel real hope now in my heart. Can't fully express my gratitude. Karen." So I wanted to share that tonight because the process that we're doing and what we're experiencing with the Tempest is about us going through our own crucifixion and accepting through compassion and appreciation, not through judgment, but as we hold those experiences and allow them to speak and allow them to diffuse, come through that wound. I mean, it takes a lot of vulnerability to do that. But oh my God, it opens you back up. And the feeling, the experience is tremendous, liberating. So we'll take a quick break and then we'll do a meditation. We're going to do a guided meditation. Okay?
What is that? When you're back in the superposition, that means you've accepted the duality.
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
Or you're living it. You've integrated the duality,
Yes.
the feminine, masculine,
Inner child,
inner
adult,
child, adult,
higher
and
self, lower self. Yes. And that's how it begins. And then as you start working with that, then they start bringing more of the dualities until there's infinite bridges. Infinite radiant
a lot
lines.
more dualities to deal with than what you listed there.
Right. But these are our practice ones. And as you stop running,
I'm going home.
that's enough.
This is too much.